Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video is an update on the pancetta I started a few weeks ago. In that original video, my dad butchered an entire pig's head, and then we applied a salt and spice mixture to turn it into a sort of guanciale pancetta hybrid. That mixture was left on the pork face for just under 2 weeks, covered in the fridge, and I was rotating it and moving it around about every 2 or 3 days. At this point, the salt and much of the flavor from the spices is already absorbed into the meat, and what you're seeing now is us rinse off the excess spices from the surface. We then tied it up into a tight as cylinder as possible, and then it was going back into the fridge, open, with additional moisture added into the fridge and air circulation. It's slightly counterintuitive, but when you are doing charcuterie or regular dry aging in the fridge, you actually want the environment quite humid. You have to remember that the capacity of air to hold water vapor is very dependent on temperature. So at the fridge temperatures of around 4 degrees Celsius, even 70 or 80% relative humidity is dry compared to room temperature air. If the fridge was at its normal temperature and normal low relative humidity, the outside would dry off extremely quickly and actually make it more difficult to lose moisture throughout the entire piece. At 4 degrees Celsius and between 70 and 80 relative humidity, the moisture does leave the protein, but slowly and more evenly. Of course, another thing that regulates moisture loss in the case of pancetta is the shape. I did recommend trying this project with a pig face like I did, but be warned that it is a little more difficult to tie up compared to pork belly. The shape and thickness is relatively uneven, so you just need to be a little more careful when you are rolling and tying. Another unique challenge of working with a pig face versus a pork belly is the eye holes. Once rolled up, it's possible the eye holes can create an environment for fungus to grow. So we took some extra pieces of pork fat and shoved it in there. Once it was rolled up, it remained in the fridge open for about 1 week. Again, I tried to maintain the aforementioned environmental conditions, but it did probably fluctuate more than I would have liked. After the week, there was roughly a 26% weight loss due to moisture loss. Another tragedy is that I did not film the final unveiling and chopping up into sections, but I did get some good photos. And I do have some footage of the first time I cooked with this pancetta. The dish I am making in this footage is spaghetti alla Grecia, which is sort of a cousin to both cacio e pepe and carbonara. It is literally just pasta, a little bit of pecorino cheese, a little bit of pepper, and traditionally guanciale. Of course, pancetta also works, and I thought my hybrid charcuterie would be perfect for the dish. One thing I will mention, and I do this with a lot of charcuterie like this, is I cooked this piece of pancetta sous vide overnight at around 60 Celsius. And this ensures everything is nice and soft, and when I'm cooking it, I only need to worry about getting the outside crispy. The dish turned out really well, and as you'll see in the footage, I'm working on a few tips and tricks to foolproof this type of pasta dish. Overall, I would say the pig face pancetta is a massive success. It was very cost effective. It tasted really good in the end. Obviously, you can buy a piece of pork belly, but the entire pig face is much more small and manageable compared to a full-sized pork belly. Now, some things I would change for next time. I think I used a little too much honey powder in my curing mixture. I do really enjoy that flavor in the pancetta, but it's a little too strong relative to the other spices. So the next attempt, I would definitely reduce that proportion a little bit and probably even increase the spices a little bit. You do definitely get those flavors, but it could definitely be a little more intense for my preference. So that is pretty much it for this project, although I'm sure I will be posting some pancetta related recipes and eventually attempting a version 2.0. But since we are talking about pork, I thought I would give you all a sneak preview of another project we've started, inspired by, of course, Brad Leone from Bon Appetit. We are doing some dry aged pork. The plan is to give it just over 3 weeks of dry aging, and we actually have two different pork roasts. Both are center cut rib roasts, so the equivalent of prime rib from beef. Both are relatively local, but one of them is more conventionally raised, and one is a bit more free range with some foraging, I assume. So it will be very interesting to see both what the pork tastes like after dry aging and whether there is a noticeable difference between the two types of pork. And that is finally it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about these projects, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.